Hey, what's up? I'm Ryan, and we're doing something cool. We're going to add live commenting to my website. We're going to compare Velt, and we're going to compare Liveblocks and see which one comes out on top. I want the real-time commenting to be able to click somewhere, leave a comment. It should be feature-rich. I can leave video, I can leave voice recordings, I can talk to my chief marketing officer through these and make sure the website looks good before it goes to production. And I want an inbox to be able to see everything that has been talked about in one easy to use place. So let's get into the video and let's get coding. So let's get started. I got my IDE open and I have Liveblocks documentation. I found their overlay comments. Let's see how difficult it is to get started. So this is what I'm looking for. Get started. Okay, they have a command here and then manual setup. View on GitHub. Okay. Let me expand this real quick. Okay, here's some code. So, it looks like Liveblocks does not actually walk you through how to get started other than making an n.local file with your Liveblocks secret key. So apparently I have to copy all of this code over to get this feature to work. Oh God. All right. I said I'd do it. Let's do it.
20 minutes later.
This is Ryan from 20 Minutes in the Future. I just spent the last 20 minutes looking on Liveblocks' website for any kind of documentation. I couldn't find it. So I've just been using the code sample they gave me and trying to port it to my project. It was a rabbit hole that ended up not working. The developer experience is very poor for implementing this overlay comment. But I think I've stepped back and identified 11 different things I need to port over from their code snippets to my existing project to get it to work. So we're going to start going through it one by one, starting now. So far, developer experience has not been great for Liveblocks, but hopefully they can redeem themselves once we get coding. Let's see. All right, so the first thing I started looking at was a package.json. I noticed that they have a bunch of different things that they've downloaded to their project that I probably need to get in mine. So what I've done is I've just made an npm install command for all the different things they have that I do not, and I'm going to run it. So let me switch over to my code editor here, and let me do this command. Start installing. Command not found. Okay. Oop, we can fix that. All right, so that was the first step. I have all their dependencies installed. All right, so step 2 is to initialize the Liveblocks config. So I went back to the documentation of regular comments, which aren't the overlay comments we want, but they're just normal comments. And I found this command to initialize the Liveblocks config. So I'm going to actually steal that and run it in my terminal here and create a liveblocks.config.ts. And now I actually believe this is wrong for the overlay comments. You have to do a lot of configuring of this to, get stuff to work. So if I go back into the overlay comments and I go to Liveblocks config, I'm going to steal the one that they provided here real quick. Oh goodness, gotta be a better way to, there we go. There we go. All right, so that is all copied. Switch back over and replace my Liveblocks config with the overlay comments config. So that's looking good. Step 2 complete. All right, so step 3 is to get this database.ts file over from Liveblocks repo to my actual website. So I'm going to save you all the time-consuming command I had to type out, and I'm just going to pop it in here, copy this over from the repo I downloaded of Liveblocks over to my website, and boom, the website now has a database.ts file. So that's step number 3. We're trucking along here. All right, step number 4, get a .m.local file going with a Liveblocks secret key. So let me switch over to my editor here. We're going to build this .m.local, Perfect. I'm gonna fill this in with my secret key off camera so you scammers don't get my information. Start racking up a bill. But that's step number 4. All right, so for step number 5, I've been digging through the code base. There's something called lib, which has 2 files, chords and use max z index. I think this is what controls the little cursor for leaving comments. So we're gonna copy this over now. Oh, beautiful, internal server error. As you can see, Liveblocks is not going great, but we continue on. I'm going to run my command quickly here, copy over the lib, get those over in my code base. Yep, chords and use max z index. Perfect. So I got that over. That's step number 5. All right, so step number 6, I think GitHub went down. That explains the internal server error. So I just opened up the code editor with the code I downloaded, and I'm going to continue following along. So on the right side is Liveblocks. On the left side is my website. They have a styles directory with a comments.css that seems important. I'm going to add that along in mine just in case it is. There's no documentation telling me whether it is or not, but that's step number 6. Add comments.css. Step number 7, let's get room.tsx from the example over to my website. So I'm going to go into components, new file, room.tsx, and I'm going to copy and paste what Liveblocks provided in their code sample and save it. Step number 8, again, just going at it. I have no documentation, but the Liveblocks example has 3 directories that look important: comments, cursors, and icons, with a lot of code that I've been kind of, moseying my way through. So I'm going to select these and just drag them over to mine under components and grab all those because I think they're important. Step number 9, we want to get the API portion of the Liveblocks example over to my app. So I'm going to take this and drag it under pages because they're using a different version of Next.js than I am, and I have to go and I actually have to rewrite all of this code to be a lower version of Next.js. So stay tuned, I'm going to get that code written. All right, after about 30 minutes, I got the API working. I got it over to the lower version of Next.js that I'm using versus the app router version that they provide in the code sample. So that's looking good. So this brings me to step 10 and 11. So we want to go into our app and we want to import the Liveblocks provider that they provide, wrap that around our app here. And then finally in index.tsx, we want to import room, cursors, and comments, the files we made, and actually use them. That is all 11 steps. Let's run the app. Let's see what we got. All right, moment of truth, npm run dev. It is now 3 hours later. I'm running it for the first time. I did all the things I think are important. We're going to go to localhost 3000. And look at that, we have overlay comments, except they don't work. And they only offer comments. No. Guys, I've been at this 3 hours at this point, and it doesn't work. This is absolutely ridiculous. All right, so what do I think of Liveblocks? Total code time was about 3 hours. I had to do everything myself. Documentation was very poor. I cannot even get it to work. I'm not sure what the issue is. My cursor won't actually move. I can't pick where I'm going to leave the comments, and they just disappear. So Liveblocks has been a total failure for me. Developer experience was not great because there was none. You have to basically code everything yourself. They just give you files that you have to copy over and hope you're doing it right, and I can't even get it to work. Do I recommend this? Absolutely not. I can't believe I've been at it this long. It was almost just a labor of like, I'm going to get this to work, but I never actually could. So I do not recommend Liveblocks. Not great. All right, so Liveblocks was a total letdown. Let's get started with Velt. I'm on their documentation page, and I'm already liking what I'm seeing. There's a quick start guide and a setup guide for existing apps. I'm going to click setup, and let's see how many steps there are. 3 steps. So Velt says in 3 steps they can get us up and running with real-time comments. Very cool. Let's see how it does. Okay, so I love their documentation. They give you the code snippet right away, and then they give you the actual steps. So I'm going to install these packages into my project, which is velt.dev/react, and then I also need the types because I'm using TypeScript. Step 3 is to grab your API key and then safe list your domain, which I've done off camera. And then they want to add a Velt provider. Okay. So I'm going to go into my index.tsx, and at the top level, just make a higher order component that wraps my entire app in the Velt provider. And then go on to the next step, which is authenticate. So authenticate is actually making a new component called your auth component. So I'm going to go into my components here and make a new file called your auth component.tsx, and I'm actually going to just straight up copy this into it. So I got my auth component going, and that is really the reality of step 2. Very easy. I'm loving the documentation so far. And then step 3, initialize the document. So it looks like the important thing here is, so make sure this is a child component and setting a document ID. Okay, so we're going to, I guess that's really it. Make a component just like they have called your document.tsx, and I'm going to grab their code here. Okay, so we've imported the document that they suggested in the Velt documentation, and then now I know I want to grab the Velt comment tool, so we can actually use all the different Velt like kind of pre-built components that they offer. So the sidebar button, and then I'm going to do Velt presence. Very nice. And then I'm going to export those right here. And I'm going to actually paste this in just to make it a little less typing on video. There we go. So I'm using the Velt comment tool, Velt presence, and the Velt sidebar button. And just so you know, as a bonus tip, you can style all this. I actually created my own component called Velt toolbar, and all it does is import the your document component and add some style to it so it looks a little better. And this is my style here. Pretty simple, but I'm styling that Velt toolbar just the way I like it. It kind of matches my website. I dig it. And then the final thing we should do is, like I said, I wanted to use the comments and the comments sidebar. I think we need to have that in our provider for it to work as well. So I'm going to add that in. So Velt comment, comments. There we go. And then I want that in dark mode because, I mean, dark mode's obviously cool. And then the Velt comments sidebar because I'm using that as well. And then we'll do dark mode on that. Give us some styling out of the box, which is super handy. Okay, import that. And then finally, let's kill this, run the server. That is automatically reloaded. And let's see how we did. Oh, sorry, gotta add the API key. Whoop. We're gonna blur this out. And then the last thing we need to do is make sure the auth component is imported in the document. So I'm gonna make sure that's imported and save that. And then finally, we wanna go to our provider and add in our API key and the Velt comments and Velt comments sidebar inside the provider, and then run that, and lo and behold, we have real-time commenting. This is a test. How cool is that? In terms of ease of use, Velt is miles ahead of Liveblocks. This was an incredibly enjoyable experience. I can now go actually code on my business instead of worrying about the logic that something like this should provide out of the box. Well, to finish us off, I have to give it to Velt. They are easy to use, the documentation is great, and it is an absolute joy to use. Liveblocks, on the other hand, is a ton of code. There's no documentation, extremely hard to use, and you're basically on your own. I think Velt is just miles above Liveblocks when it comes to building real-time comments just like this. I love that you can do video, I love that you can add files, and I love that it just works and I can get back to coding my business logic instead of something that should be handled for me. So, Velt, clear winner. It's not even close. That's really all I got for you, folks.